Hey folks, welcome back to another puzzle profile of my 7 most over-the-top and outrageous Twisty puzzles. Last time we talked about this guy, the 12 by 12 by 12 Rubik's Cube, which was an expanded version of the original Rubik's Cube, which was 3 by 3 by 3. This time we're going to talk about this one here, the Teraminx. The Teraminx is a 7 by 7 dodecahedral puzzle. It is a face-turning puzzle, as you can see. I turn it by grabbing a face and rotating it around like that, and it has multiple layers to turn, and 7 pieces along each edge. Unlike the cubes, because we're dealing with a 12-sided shape, a dodecahedron, each face is pentagonal and has 5 edges. And this Teraminx is the 7 by 7 version of this guy, the Megaminx, which is a 3 by 3 face-turning dodecahedron. The Megaminx is a really great fun puzzle to solve and a nice step up from the 3 by 3. Essentially, you use similar techniques to solving the 3 by 3. However, one particular part of the solve, which would be called F2L, or the first 2 layers on the 3 by 3, is substantially extended on the Megaminx because we have now 12 faces and 30 edges instead of 6 faces and 12 edges. So there's a lot more edge pairing going on. So essentially you do what would be the F2L stage on a 3 by 3 4 times. And for me, that's the most interesting and strategic and challenging part of a 3 by 3 solve. So being able to do that much more on a Megaminx is a lot of fun. However, I'm not very good at the Megaminx, I have to say. I'm much slower, primarily because the 12 colors makes it harder to recognize pieces quickly, but I am working on it. The Teraminx takes that exact same puzzle and scales it up, much like the larger order Rubik's Cubes. So we just have a lot more pieces, and now we have sets of centerpieces and edge pieces that need to be solved. And just like with the larger cubes, we solve the larger dodecahedral puzzles by reduction. So when the Teraminx is scrambled, I would then try to reassemble all the face centerpieces on their appropriate faces. This is an odd order Minx puzzle, so that means it has fixed centerpieces like the odd layered Rubik's Cubes. So these centerpieces don't move. So that means on this puzzle I don't have to remember the color scheme. However, on an even layered large order dodecahedron, the centers would not be present, fixed centers would not be present, so I would need to remember the color scheme. So I would assemble all the face centers on each side, then I would bring all the edge pieces back together, and then I would have solved centers and edge pieces and then corners, and I could then solve that just like a 3 by 3 Megaminx. One of the advantages of the larger order dodecahedrons is that unlike the higher order cubes, you essentially have a lot more room to work with 12 sides, so it's a bit more freewheeling, the solving process. You have a lot of edges to pair up with each other and a lot of centers to solve, but you also have a lot of places to store the things that you've solved successfully. So there's a really appealing kind of creative element to solving these dodecahedrons. Even the Megaminx, if you watch competitive speed solvers who are good at the Megaminx, they all have wildly different styles on how they pair up all the edges and corners and progress through the solve, and that's because they have this additional room to work. The level of complexity of the puzzle is a lot higher than the cubes in that, first of all, the 12 colors means you have more pieces to recognize. The pieces all have a lot more possible orientations they can be in because they can be shifted around all these different 5-sided faces. And so the number of pieces on each of these puzzles is much larger. So the 3 by 3 cube has 20 movable pieces, I said in the last video. The Megaminx has 50 movable pieces, so already a lot more. And the Teraminx has 530 movable pieces, which is huge. And the number of possible scrambles is something on the order of 10 to the 573rd power. So definitely plenty of variety to be had in this puzzle, since every scramble will solve a bit differently. The other nice aspect of these is that, on the higher order cubes, you can end up with parity errors, as I mentioned, where because you scrambled it like a higher order puzzle and then reduced it to a lower order puzzle that has less possible moves, you end up with pieces in impossible positions when you're trying to do the reduced 3 by 3 solve. You do get parity on the larger dodecahedrons that have an even number of layers, but there's only one type of parity, and it's really easily resolved. There is no parity at all on the dodecahedrons with odd numbers of layers. So that again adds a nice sort of freeing sense to the solve. You can just go through your reduction process however you like, not worry about any parity before you just progress directly into the Megaminx solve, which also has a nice sort of freewheeling way of approaching it. So in general, these puzzles are blast to solve. They are a bit of a marathon, particularly these large ones like the Teraminx, since you have so many piece types to deal with and there's so many faces and so on. But for me, they're really, really enjoyable. And fortunately, these larger dodecahedrons are made by a company called Shengshou, and they've done a really nice job. They turn smoothly. This one still has a bit too much lube left in it from the factory, so it kind of feels a bit gummy, but still very smooth. Besides, this is the largest dodecahedron that I have, the Teraminx 7x7, but I also have the 4x4 Megaminx, which is called the Master Kilominx. I have the 5x5, which is called the Gigaminx. All of those are made by Shengshou, and they're all really fantastic puzzles. The only complaint I would say is that because Shengshou likes to put a lot of lube in their puzzles in the factory, and that can cause some of the stickers to want to slide off. And these puzzles do use stickers. They don't use colored plastic like the large cubes here. Excuse me. However, they are nice enough to include extra stickers in the box for each of these puzzles, so you do have backups. And there are really nice, high-quality custom stickers available online from shops like Chewy's Custom Stickers or Oliver's Custom Stickers. They're a little bit more expensive, but they are very high quality. And you can also get specialty stickers like stickers to turn this into a super cube. Super cubes are where all these kind of pieces, like if you look at these 4 centerpieces here, they look identical. On a super cube, the stickers differentiate every piece from each other, so every piece has only one solved position, and that makes the solve significantly more complex in some areas. So there are advantages to the stickering aspect of this, in that you can do some sort of modification of the puzzle with new stickering schemes and so forth. But yeah, in general, I highly recommend the larger order dodecahedral puzzles. They're challenging and interesting. They have new elements beyond the cubes. They look really intimidating and cool when they're scrambled. The quality of the puzzles is good. The prices are not too outrageous. So definitely worth taking the plunge if you're curious. However, you really do need to understand the 3x3 to a pretty high level before you start getting into the dodecahedrons, in my opinion. Otherwise, the solves will just take too long and they will be tedious rather than fun. So, on a beginner's level solve of the 3x3, you would place each individual piece into position one by one. However, when you get to a more intermediate level, you start doing F2L, which I referred to before, and that's where you solve sets of edge pieces and corners at the same time. So you pair pieces up and slot them into position all at once. You need to solve so many edges and corners on the dodecahedrons that being comfortable with F2L is hugely important, I think, to enjoying these puzzles as much as possible. So I would say get really comfortable with the cubes, learn F2L, get comfortable with that, then get yourself a Megaminx, and from there, jump in. The sky's the limit. I should say as well that this is the largest dodecahedron that I own, but it's far from the largest that's available. So Shengshou also makes an 8x8 dodecahedron called the Royal Kilominx and a 9x9 called the Petaminx. And they've just recently released a stickerless plastic, i.e. a colored plastic version of an 11x11 Examinx, which is just titanically huge. I think that officially has the largest number of pieces of any mass-produced Twisty puzzle at over 1,500. I think there's 1,533 pieces, if I remember. So I'm really excited about that puzzle, and hopefully it means that they will re-release some of their smaller dodecahedrons in colored plastic without stickers. I would definitely really like to get those just for the practicalities and not having to deal with sticker maintenance and so forth. I mean, you can see on this puzzle that, some of the stickers are slightly wonky if you look closely, like some of them a little bit chipped and sliding off and so forth, but nothing that so far has interfered with my solving, but it is, does damage the aesthetic a little bit, and then you have to keep making sure they don't fall off. So if you want to go crazy, you can go all the way up to an 11x11 dodecahedron and spend hours upon hours solving it. For all the reasons I've stated, I think it's a really nice progression to go to the dodecahedrons from the standard face-turning Rubik's Cubes. So that is the Teraminx. To give you an idea, I bought this from a shop in China called Z-Cube. Cost me $38. It feels very solid and well built. It's a decent amount of money, but considering that some high-end 3x3 Rubik's Cubes for speed solving can go to $60 or even more, actually it's kind of a bargain, really. And certainly, the size makes it feel nice and impressive as well. So from here, we're going to move on to another platonic solid, the icosahedron, and we'll talk a little bit about Aton Star, another one of my over-the-top and outrageous twisty puzzles. So see you next time.